Welcome to day 108. We have 1 Samuel chapter 20 and 21 today, Psalm 34 and Matthew 5. David escapes again. This is a rough period of David's life. He develops a plan to not die, and we are reminded of the covenant between David and Jonathan and how it is more important to them than Jonathan or David's relationship to Saul, Jonathan's dad. Verse 17, we have a place where it reminds us that Jonathan loves David more than his own soul. Saul eventually explodes again and tries to kill Jonathan this time. David escapes. He tries to go to Gath, but is recognized, so he pretends to be crazy so that he can escape again. Now, I think inside David is hurt by this whole situation. I think he wants to honor and serve Saul. He's most likely taken an oath to Saul as king, and Saul is suffering from mental illness. And my guess is David realizes that a lot of what's going on with Saul is not personal, but is caused by whatever disease or chemical imbalance that Saul is struggling with. So, one of the things for us to think about, we can't go back in time and provide services to Saul, but we can support mental health providers today. We can support the government programs that use our tax dollars to provide mental health services in our community, or to provide research funding so that we can come up with better solutions to support people suffering from mental health problems. Because the reality is there's a lot of suffering from mental health that we still don't have great treatments for today. One of the things I really want to lift up here is that there have been people in the church who have told people who are suffering with mental health issues that it is a lack of faith on their part, that if their faith was stronger, that they would be fine. Now, there has been a period, there's been a tradition within the church, even within the Bible, that illness is caused by sin, that there is something you did wrong or your parents did wrong that has caused you to become sick or to live with a disability. And we've mostly gotten over this when it comes to physical disabilities. We serve people with diabetes and cancer, and we don't tell them, go pray and, see what God says. But somehow we still are sending this message to people with mental health issues. And I think we still need to be providing treatment, providing support to people with mental health issues, just as we do with physical health issues. We need to be pursuing healing just as Jesus was healing people. So, write to elected officials to support funding for research. Work with local officials, work with local health providers to be able to make sure that people who have mental health issues have access to the best treatment and care that we can provide today. Psalm 34 is a prayer about how God helps, which is something that is definitely a theme from our 1 Samuel reading. And when we get to Matthew chapter 5, we're moving into the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. And this is really a couple of chapters that many people feel are the core of the teachings of Jesus. And there are many people who are not even Christian who still turn to these few chapters to see what Jesus was teaching and to live into this and try to expand this life ethic into the world today. So this is a way of living that Jesus is talking about here. It is new values, or at least it's an expansion and an emphasis on values that God tried to share in the Hebrew Bible through commandments, through Moses, and through prophets. Now, Jesus' values are not earthly values. They are not focused on power and prestige and comfort. And after he goes through some of the Beatitudes, he then tries to explain a little bit more. Be salt, be light in the world, bring flavor to the world, bring light, shine God's light into the darkness that people are feeling sometimes in their lives. Jesus really makes it clear that he's not there to replace the law of Moses, but to complete the law of Moses. Jesus is not a rejection of the scriptures of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. And I think once again, we're seeing a message from Jesus here that in this gospel that what we think matters as well as what actions we take, and that we need to be careful about the thoughts in our head. Now, we don't entirely always have control over the thoughts in our heads, but sometimes we need to let those thoughts just pass through our minds and focus instead on the message of Jesus, the thoughts that God wants to emphasize, the thoughts that drive us towards healthy behaviors. And some of the thoughts that are healthier for us are the values and thoughts of forgiveness and reconciliation, generosity and honesty, loving our enemies, showing grace, living with maturity, and not acting like petty children. Basically, it all boils down to living like Jesus, making the choices Jesus made, finding time for Jesus in our life, continuing to learn so that we can teach others the message of Jesus. So I definitely encourage you, Matthew 6 in the next couple chapters, and there's a section like this in Luke as well, that these are really important chapters to reread every once in a while to stay focused on what was most important to Jesus. And what then is most important for us to be focusing on in our lives. So, best wishes as you walk in the path that Jesus sets before us. We'll see you next time.